A team of kids that are going to teach kids how to do editing on YouTube and everything else. And you can have a YouTube channel. Your mom has to put it in her name because kids can't own it. But right now, 40% of YouTube channels are making over $100,000 a year on YouTube. Did you know that?
Tells me that. There's money to be made here.
So what's your name?
Dash.
I'm sorry?
Dash.
Like
Dash.
Dash, I love that. Dash, your YouTube channel is going to be called Dash, okay?
You have a YouTube channel under my name. It's called Mr. Extra Boring.
I'm sorry, what is it?
Mr. Extra Boring.
Mr. Boring.
Mr. Extra Boring? That's awesome.
So if kids today can have a YouTube channel instead of delivering a newspaper, imagine the possibilities. And with a nod to one of my favorite journalism teachers at Los Gatos High, I'd like to disclose my personal potential biases as we get ready to do this event. I was born in San Francisco in 1964. My parents' first apartment was in the Haight-Ashbury district, which is now a walking tour. I grew up around hippies and protesters and during the civil rights movement. Everything was pretty black and white. We watched the same television shows and we heard the same speeches together until we moved to the suburbs out in Martinez, California.
Yay, I grew up in Martinez. Deerwood Court. Deerwood Court.
Oh, I know where that is.
My dad wasn't drafted in Vietnam because he had me. It was some of those protests and some journalism that exposed some issues related to that war. This is Seymour Hersh, the investigative reporter who reported on Vietnam during that time.
You seem to be winding down your career at a time when the news has never been more controversial and perhaps there's never been a greater need for investigative journalism, especially in the United States.
I think it's going to hell. Now, what you have is, if you don't like Trump, you read the New York Times and Washington Post and watch certain cable shows, CNN. If you like Trump, you watch Fox News and you read other papers.
But they're not equal though, are you? That's buying into a Trump narrative. Fox News is not the same as the New York Times. The New York Times still does good journalism in the way that Fox News doesn't.
But the credibility of the New York Times, because it's so hostile to him, maybe legitimately, but over the top, I think. They've gone way over the top in terms of like writing an anonymous letter.
Do you believe...
When my parents divorced, it was explained to me best by Kramer versus Kramer. My grandmother taught me to iron while we watched the Watergate hearings. Those hearings resulted in lots of newspapers being published, and being a kid that needed money living in Berkeley, I was one of the first paper girls for the Chronicle. I suppose I have Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein to thank for all of that. But then again, I got to watch them as Dustin Hoffman and Robert Redford in All the President's Men. Years later, I got to watch one of my favorite, Cynthia McFadden, interview the editors of the Washington Post and the New York Times. But it was meeting Bob Elko, investigative reporter and legal writer for the San Francisco Chronicle a few months ago, that was the most meaningful. We met at the federal courthouse in San Francisco, just a few blocks away from where I had lived with my parents during the civil rights movement in the Haight-Ashbury district. Bob described for me what the newsroom used to look like, what reporters used to do there, and yet the day we met, they were all gone. As a child, I always believed our elections were fair and that our press was free. Superman was always my favorite superhero. He didn't use guns, and he was an investigative reporter by day. As a young woman, I learned about the courts from watching John Grisham movies. One of my favorites is The Rainmaker, where a mother gets up on the stand and talks about the letter that she was sent, where she was called stupid, stupid, stupid for making a complaint about her dying son and an insurance company that didn't want to pay. In John Grisham's movie The Rainmaker, a young Matt Damon convinces a jury to give a family $50 million using flashcards and shaming an opposing counsel and a greedy CEO who chose profits over the life of their son. And what mother wouldn't want her son back more than $50 million? And what mother isn't proud to see their son in the newspaper, or to see their son wear a firefighter outfit knowing that they will save lives and be heroes in some of our most troubling times? Perhaps it was those images, those beliefs, and that information that led me to be a print publisher when I can choose what I wanted to be when I grew up. And perhaps it was those reasons that I decided to trust my magazine with the Metro newspaper when I had to sell it during my divorce. But it was the images after my divorce that drove me into investigative journalism. To become a member of Investigative Reporters and Society of Professional Journalists, to go to the New York Times with stories, to the governor's office, and to reach out to every mainstream media outlet that I could find. When I grew up, we knew who to call when things didn't add up, when something didn't feel right, or when we saw images out on our streets that didn't make sense or that contradicted themselves. Perhaps that is why this day was so spectacular, when an investigative reporter, a lawyer, and an activist met up with a group of individuals pushing for transparency and accountability in our courts and with our public officials. These people are YouTube bloggers, publishers, and producers. They are like documentary filmmakers. They have a mission, they have a purpose, they have a vision, just like all the other producers that I've worked with, like all the other authors and publishers. These people look for public records. They review the law, they animate, and they talk about things such as marketing themselves and making transparency a priority. And on September 19th, 2019, at McAfee Theater in Saratoga, California, we're going to talk about investigative journalism now and back then. We're going to talk about what it means to free speech and open government and the public right to know. We're going to bring together some of our Facebook friends. We're going to bring real moms and real dads, politicians and students, and we're going to talk about mainstream media and social media. We're going to talk about the college cheating scandal and what we think about police officers and parents and trust in mainstream media and who we call when we need to come together as a community. If we have to use flashcards or call the ACLU, we will, because the future of journalism looks like this.
What? Is it connected to Bluetooth or something? Yeah. Through an app. The app is
Like, move your hand like this.
oh yeah.
Move it like
It's connected with Bluetooth, so that's how it's able to.
Go like this. Move it like.
On September 19th, it will be my honor and privilege, in the name of the late Sally Howe of the Campbell Express, to give a Green Key Award to documentary filmmakers and investigative journalists, public records experts, and storytellers who changed the way journalism looks like today, and to award a special award to the future rainmaker who will be our next John Grisham, and who will show us why transparency and storytelling are so important. So thanks for making it rain, San Joaquin Valley Transparency. I hope everyone will subscribe and join us on September 19th as we live stream this very special event.